Hi Norman, this is Brad here with Progression Support, and I think I understand your problem. It looks to me like you've got an imported file that came from another CAD system, and this assembly was probably built in the context of another assembly. So that means that the reference planes and everything are not going to be lined up intelligently for this assembly. They're lined up with the parent assembly that it came out of. And I'm going to show you a technique how you can get around this. So we've opened up your file in SolidWorks, and I'm going to hide the reference planes. What we need to do is create our own internal coordinate system, a reference coordinate system that will give a little bit more of an intelligent orientation of the axes. So to do this, since you don't really have any hard edges, any hard straight edges on the model, we're going to first need to draw ourselves a little sketch that will represent what we want the X, Y, or Z axes to be. Now let's do this as a 3D sketch. If you haven't done a 3D sketch before, it's under your sketch icon here. Just drop this arrow down and let's choose 3D sketch. Let's go in and draw a line. Now the first line I draw, it seems like a reasonable place for this might be to locate our new reference coordinate system right at the top center of this circle here. So I'm going to start drawing a vertical line up like this, and then I'll just come out with a straight line out to the side. And it seems maybe if we were to line this line up parallel to this axis down here, that might make sense. So I'm going to turn on, under the View menu, I'm going to turn on my temporary axes. I'll do a Control Select, and then I'll just make a parallel relationship. Okay, and now I'll go ahead and exit my sketch. All I've done here is just drawn some construction geometry in the form of a sketch, a 3D sketch. The reason I did a 3D sketch is so I didn't have to go through set up a reference plane. Now, under the Insert Reference Geometry command, we'll choose Coordinate System. When we want to make a reference coordinate system, we need to pick a point or a vertex, and then lines or edges that define the axes. So I'll pick on the point of our sketch that we drew, and you can see how it puts in an origin there, but it's not exactly lined up the way that I would want. Now I think I like the y-axis being vertical here, and let's go ahead and make the z-axis along this line here. So that's going to be the orientation, and just pay attention to your preview. That's going to be the orientation of our new coordinate system. I'll check mark that. That all looks good. And you can see now in your Feature Manager tree, down at the very bottom, you'll see that there's a new reference coordinate system with the proper axes. Now as for our 3D sketch, we can just hide that, and we can hide our temporary axes. Now, we're going to do an export. We're going to export this back out as either a step or a Parasolid file. So let's do a File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as a Parasolid file just because that's the native SolidWorks neutral file format, but you could do IGES or you could do STEP. I'm going to do the Parasolid, but here's the trick. When we do the export, make sure you hit this Options button down here, because that's going to give us some export options. And at the bottom of the export options, you're looking for this box that says Output Coordinate System. Here we're going to drop this down and choose our newly created coordinate system, Coordinate System 1, and hit OK. And then I'll give a name to this. I'm just going to call it New Cable, and save it. At this time, I can close down this existing assembly. I don't even need to save it if I don't want to. And now let's open up the new Parasolid file. So File, Open. I'll choose Parasolid. There's my file called New Cable, and I'll hit Open. It's asking if I want to create new files in that same directory, and I'll just say yes to that. Depending on your settings, it may automatically create the assembly and the parts, or it may prompt you to choose a template. I've got my settings to where it prompts me to pick a template for any new assemblies and any new parts that it creates. Now once it creates that new assembly, you'll see now that our front plane, top plane, and right plane now coincide very nicely with the center axis of that first tube, or that first cable. So that's how you can go through and take an imported model, create a reference coordinate system, re-export with that coordinate system, and then re-import it back in. So it's kind of like making a round trip with the exported model. But now everything's lined up in a convenient fashion. So hopefully you'll be able to reproduce those steps and have good luck with that.